The Doctor. In the TARDIS. Next stop, everywhere.
Again, everyone. Welcome back to Next Stop Everywhere, the Doctor Who podcast. I'm one of your co-hosts, Charles Skaggs, back in the TARDIS, ready to talk some more classic Doctor Who with my wonderful partner in time and Dallas Cowboys football sufferer, Jesse Jackson. How you doing, Jesse?
I am great, Charles. Yeah, this Sunday it's the big Cowboys-Browns, the Doctor Who Bowl, except you and I never make any bets or anything when they play. Yeah,
I will bet that my team loses. How's that?
The Cowboys are one weird onside kick away from being 0-3. So, we are not feeling very optimistic right now.
Well, somehow the Browns are 2-1. I have no idea how that happened, but it did. So we'll see what happens, but on Sunday. But anyway, I just thought I'd mention that because since our two teams are playing this coming weekend, so for all two of you that actually watch Doctor Who and watch football,
yes.
Like Jesse and I, just thought I'd share that. So here at episode 202, we are going to be talking The Invasion, and thankfully joining us to talk about this great classic story from the Patrick Troughton era is one of our favorite special guest companions. So glad he's back. Please welcome back to Next Stop Everywhere, John Takacs, everybody. Yay!
Hey, thanks, guys. I'm so happy to be talking about this story today. This is one of my all-time favorites.
Yes, this was something that I can't remember. Did you suggest this one, or did I suggest this one and you wanted to be a part of it? I couldn't remember.
I think I saw it on the. It was
still available.
Yeah, I think it was on there. Wasn't highlighted off of there, so I was like, I wanted to jump on this one.
All right, so you snagged this one. You were eager, so that's good because that means I think we're in for a great discussion because we've got people. I know I'm enthused about it. John's obviously enthused about it, and by what Jesse was talking about just a little bit before we started recording, he's enthusiastic about this one.
I am. I am ready to talk. This is good.
And I think this is going to be a great story. It's a big story because, hey, this is kind of the first appearance of UNIT on Doctor Who. I mean, we had seen the Brigadier before in the Web of Fear, even though at that time he was just Colonel Lethbridge Stewart?
I think so, yes.
Yeah, and so he got a promotion. And he got himself a nice new task force. And we also get the first appearance of Corporal Benton, not Sergeant Benton, played, but of course, by the great John Levene, whom we'll talk about here shortly. So this is a big deal, and we get the return of the Cybermen and a lot of great stuff. So let's run this down. So obviously this story, The Invasion, written by Derek Sherwin, who previously wrote The Mind Robber, the previous story to this one, and is credited by Terrence Dicks as being the creator of the Time Lords in Patrick Troughton's final story, The War Games. So I thought that was cool. And directed by Douglas Camfield, who actually makes an appearance in the story as the guy who gives the Doctor, Zoe, and Jamie a lift to London from where they had been dropped off in that nice cow pasture. And this was the third serial of season 6, 1968, starring, of course, Patrick Troughton as the second Doctor. I don't know why I can't talk tonight. Frazer Hines as Jamie McCrimmon and Wendy Padbury as Zoe Heriot. And I believe I know I think we've talked the War Games before with you, Jesse, but I think this is only your second time talking Zoe here on the podcast.
Yeah, she did not seem familiar, though we've done a couple episodes with Jamie and the Doctor. So, and then we've talked many times. I'm a huge Outlander fan, so Jamie always has a warm place in my heart because of the Outlander connection.
Yeah, exactly. And I've had the fortune to meet both Frazer Hines and Wendy Padbury not too long ago here in Columbus when they attended Origins. I think it was last year, if I'm not mistaken. And I got their autograph, and they were very lovely people. And I believe I talked about how bad I felt for them because they kind of got shafted by Origins by being stuck in a very far away upper level, and they weren't able to kind of bring in the foot traffic to help make them some money for their trip.
Yeah, I think I've shared the story too, but it's worth repeating. My very first Comic Palooza in Houston, he was there, and I had not watched any Classic Who at the time. This was before we had done Next Stop Everywhere, and so I didn't take time to go meet him because I didn't know who he was. And the next year, by then, we had done the podcast, and I got involved with the Doctor Who showrunner, and I was able to do a couple of interviews with actors. And that's one of my big regrets is I wish I had known, because not only would I have loved to meet him, but I would have loved to have done the interview and talked about it. And so, yeah, I'm very glad that you got to meet him. He does seem like an absolutely great person and a great ambassador for the show.
And how about you, John? Have you been able to meet either Frazer Hines or Wendy?
Not Frazer Hines, but I've met Wendy back in '91 at one of the Chicago conventions.
Oh, cool.
It was a long time ago. But, she was an absolute sweetheart.
Yeah, she was lovely when I met her, so I have nothing but great things to say about both of them. They were very, very kind, especially given the rather stressful situation that they were going through. So, but they were very nice to me in the process, so I'm very appreciative of that. All right, guest cast this time. Of course, we have the great Nicholas Courtney returning as now newly promoted Brigadier Lethbridge Stewart. And John Levene as Corporal John Benton. This is before he becomes a sergeant in the John Pertwee era. Kevin Stoney plays Tobias Vaughn, our kind of lazy-eyed, sort of big bad, although he kind of sides with the good guys, like a Dr. Evil wannabe a little bit. He was in the previous story, the Daleks' Master Plan as Mavic Chen, and he turns up later as Tiram in Tom Baker's story Revenge of the Cybermen. And he was also in an episode of The Prisoner. I'm a big Prisoner geek. He was in the episode The Chimes of Big Ben. So for any Prisoner fans out there, that's another Doctor Who connection you can look for when you're watching that show. Sally Faulkner plays, of course, Isabel Watkins, a potential almost companion, I would say, in this story. And she turns up years and years later on a Big Finish audio adventure, winner for the Adept from, which is a Peter Davison tale from Big Finish Audios. And then we also had Edward Burnham as Professor Watkins, her uncle. And he turns up in Tom Baker's first story, Robot, as Professor J.P. Kettlewell. And he was also in the movies To Sir with Love and the Vincent Price horror classic, The Abominable Dr. Phibes, which I thought was neat. Mm-hmm. Peter Halliday plays Packer in the story, and he turns up later in the John Pertwee story. He plays Pletrak in Carnival of Monsters. Then he turns up as a soldier in Tom Baker-era story City of Death. And most notably, he was a blind vicar, the blind vicar in Remembrance of the Daleks in the Sylvester McCoy era, which is a pretty notable character in that story. Robert Sidaway plays Captain Jimmy Turner, and he was previously in a William Hartnell era story, The Savages, as Avon. Sheila Dunn was just a phone operator in the story, but I thought she was notable because she played Blossom LaFave in the Daleks' Master Plan, and she turns up in a John Pertwee story we've talked about here. Inferno played, where she played the character of Petra Williams in that story. And Ian Fairbairn played Mark Gregory in the story, and he was Questa in the Macra Terror, which John and I had the pleasure of talking about here on the podcast, and John Bromley in Inferno, and Dr. Chester in The Seeds of Doom, which I think was another one we talked about, didn't we, John?
Yeah.
Yeah, so.
I think that was my first.
Yeah, I think it was.
Wow.
Yeah, I think it was. Yeah, when my very first exposure to Doctor Who. I was very happy to talk about that, and I was glad I got to talk about it with you, John, because I know what a big Tom Baker fan you are, and you love the horror. So I appreciated that. Mm-hmm. All right, trivia this time. Hopefully John can help me out a little bit if I missed something here.
Yeah, I'll see what you got.
All right, so this was the first incomplete Doctor Who serial to be released on DVD with full-length animated reconstructions of the 2 missing episodes, 1 and 4, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. Mm-hmm. So this was a very big deal for those of us who've been hoping that something like that would happen. It finally did, and I think the animation is really gorgeous in this one. Now, it's probably why later efforts weren't as stylish, because I imagine the costs involved in going that extra mile with the animation probably made them less financially feasible for the BBC.
So, Charles, you mentioned that last week at the end of our episode. You were talking about you were giving advice, and
yeah,
you said look at the animation and pay it, and it was very well animated.
Right.
Not near the kind of, I mean, they don't do quite stop animation in future episodes we've seen, but this was a lot more fluid.
It's like a Flash-like animation they seem to be doing, but
yeah, this is one of the better ones.
Yeah,
this is definitely one of the better ones. I mean, it just, even it shot, they did it in black and white to match the episodes, but it looks really stylish, and I think it actually helps the animation a little bit because all the use of shadows, and I think it's visually arresting in my opinion. Mm-hmm. All right. Also, this was originally just going to be a 6-part story called Return of the Cybermen, and we were going to get the return of Professor Travers in the story, who actually gets name-checked a few times in this story. He was the character that we talked about, Jesse, when we talked The Web of Fear, and he was also in another story, The Abominable Snowmen, which was the very first appearance of the Great Intelligence and the Yetis. And he was supposed to come back for a 3rd time, but they decided, no, we're going to go ahead and replace him with Professor Watkins, a new guy, because if we used him, we'd have to pay his creators, Mervyn Heisman and Henry Lincoln. So essentially, they kicked Professor Travers to the curb for a few bucks. Mm-hmm. Interesting, which I thought was interesting.
Yeah, that actually seems a little strange, right? Because
right.
I don't know if, I guess, is the way...
I think that's why they go through all the hoops, that they go, well, let's go look for Professor Travers, and, Professor Travers isn't here, but, he kind of left his place to another professor, Professor Watkins, and his niece, Isabel.
Yeah, so, and it's funny, right, because you use his name, you would think you'd have to give credit for that, too, but anyway, yeah.
Yeah, I have no idea how that works as far as the legalese involved.
Yes.
But if somebody understands it, please explain it to me because I have no clue. All right. Also, Wendy Padbury doesn't appear in episode 3. This was another case where one of the Doctor Who lead actors, decides to take a holiday and bails out of the story for a complete episode. Last time we talked about it was William Hartnell, and this story, Wendy Padbury.
Back then, I guess, and John, Charles, maybe you can tell me, did they not have filming seasons? Like right now, you film 7-8 months in a row, then you're on hiatus. I guess they just filmed 52 weeks a year and you had to take vacation? That just
for the most part, it was an episode a week.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so I think it was a good, if I'm not mistaken, almost 9 months out of the year. Mm-hmm. Kind of like, they do over here in the States. But with more episodes. So you had 1 episode a week.
Yeah.
So every so often you'd have to somebody wants to take a break.
I guess. Okay.
So we just write them out of the story, which is a little odd nowadays.
It is a little odd, yes.
And here's a fun little trivia bit. Sally Faulkner's skirt kept getting blown up during the helicopter scenes, when she was climbing the rope ladder from all the wind and whatnot. So to avoid the same thing happening to him, Frazer Hines, because he's wearing a kilt as Jamie. So to prevent that, he apparently remembered reading somewhere that the Queen of England used lead weights sewn into the hem of her skirt to stop this from happening to her when she was on a helicopter or what have you. So apparently the guy who dresses Frazer for the show, he was a fisherman, so he got a hold of some of his lead weights from probably his tackle box and sewed them into his kilt. So just thought that was kind of interesting.
I think that's when I read that, I was very impressed.
I'm sure there were a lot of disappointed Frazer Hines fans that did not get to see his bare bum in that one. I guess we'll never know for sure if he's wearing underwear under that kilt. We'll just leave that there to everybody's imagination.
Very well said.
All right. John, did I miss anything?
Well, I was crossing off the ones that you're saying as I was listening here. So the invasion was actually a test story for the more earthbound stories that they would adopt later on in John Pertwee's era. I get that one there. You said how Wendy Padbury was on vacation or on holiday. Frazer Hines was actually on a scheduled break throughout episode 8. So they knew that was going to happen. So what they did was when they filmed the beginning with the TARDIS landing, they also filmed the ending with them leaving so they wouldn't have to worry about him being there for not being able to shoot it.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so I thought that was pretty interesting. Peter Halliday, he also did the voice of the Cyber director in this one.
Yes, he did.
A couple of Cybermen as well. Let's see, what else do I have on here? Oh,
he did a lot of voice work for Monsters.
He did, yeah. It's he did. I think he did.
I didn't run down the whole
too.
list because there was a lot there.
Oh yeah. There's a ton. But let's see. I think it's maybe the last one I got here. When Jamie and the Doctor are going up the elevator shaft and they pass by the little thing that said Kilroy was here.
Yeah.
Frazer Hines actually wrote that on there as a joke before they were filming, and then he said, "Well, if it's man-made, obviously somebody's gonna write something like that on there." So they just decided to leave it.
Yeah. Now, what is it? Now, wasn't the whole Kilroy was here thing? Wasn't that something they did during World War II? It's kind of like a goof among soldiers, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know.
I've never researched it.
I didn't know if anybody knew that off the top of their head, and so I'm just a little curious, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
All right, moving on, since nobody seems to know, including me. All right, 3 topics today. So topic number 1, let's talk about Patrick Troughton, our second Doctor, the Brigadier Corporal Benton, not Sergeant Benton, and the United Nations Intelligence Task Force, UNIT, making their debut. So, Jesse, first, before we get into the topic, were you surprised that this was the very first UNIT story that I sprung on you?
I was a little bit because we had Brigadier month or Brigadier thing, and so we were like, oh wait, that's kind of, how did that not make our
Brigadier month?
Brigadier month, yes, it was a really pleasant surprise. What was, and I'm going to make a point here in a minute, but the other thought was interesting is last week we had an episode, Space Museum, that ended up being a decent story, but it had a very important, for the mythos of Doctor Who, right? We talked about that last week. This one, you could make the argument we have another almost bigger mythos of UNIT and this is almost, as you guys talked about, a pilot for when the third Doctor happened. Like, they changed. I remember when they were doing the 50th anniversary, they actually talked about in a lot of ways the third Doctor was a brand new show in a lot of different ways. Yes, I was very happy to see the Brigadier, very happy to see UNIT. That was a nice reveal because I didn't know it. So the two people, like, oh, they're spies, and no, they're the good guys that's been watching them. That was nice.
Yeah. There was that great scene of where the Doctor and Jamie are kind of getting cornered by these pseudo Men in Black, and like and I love this moment where like the Doctor just kind of just resigns himself to being captured, and he sits down in the street and starts dealing out cards. Up like like he has a deck of playing cards. And he just starts scattering them out,
Yes.
waiting for just to kill time for like all of 5 seconds before they show up and grab him.
Yeah,
but it still was just very funny, and it just shows how just brilliant Patrick Troughton was as the Doctor. Just a great character moment, I thought. So let's get into this a little bit. This is, like I said, this is the very first appearance of UNIT. Now, John, when you watched this story for the first time, did you know going in that it was going to be UNIT's first story, and you were just looking forward to watching it, or were you surprised the first time you saw this one?
No, I knew about it already. I had read the novelization before I had seen it. I had gotten the VHS copy when it came out with the linking narration by Nicholas Courtney, so it didn't really detract from much. But I knew that UNIT was going to be in it, and I knew that the Brig had gotten a promotion. So
yeah, I'm kind of with you. I mean, I had the Target novelization, and so like I kind of was a little bit familiar with this one, but it's still great. It was still great to see, and especially after watching Pertwee episodes, because I got to see the Pertwee episodes thanks to the PBS scheduling out of Cleveland. I got to see those before I got to see the Patrick Troughtons.
Right.
So I got to see, so when I watched them for the first time, they were out of order.
Very timey-wimey, very Doctor Who-ish.
Exactly.
And even if you had only gotten the Target novelization, just right there from the cover, you have the UNIT logo plastered right above the Cyberman.
A good point. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. All right. So the Doctor, he's taken back. Doctor and Jamie are taken back to the headquarters. They meet up with the Brigadier, tells him about his promotion, talks to them about that. He's got this mandate now, he's got this task force to investigate these strange phenomenon because of the events of the Web of Fear, where they fought the Yetis in the streets of London and everything going on with the Great Intelligence. So somehow the Brigadier persuaded his higher-ups to hey, this is kind of important. We should do something with this. And, of course, as being a government agency, it's got government oversight. So he has to report to things like, major generals or what have you, one of which in the story is actually under the control of the Cybermen as a kind of a lackey and tries to discourage UNIT getting involved in this. So, thought that was interesting. So, guys, I guess I'll start with you, Jesse. What did you think? What did you make of the Second Doctor's reunion with the Brigadier and the way UNIT was introduced to the viewer?
So you normally ask me what I think of the episode to start out with, and so I just.
Well, you can talk about that first if you want.
Yeah, no, just.
I don't want to throw you off.
No. My first thought when I went 8 episodes, Charles is killing me.
Essentially, it's like a double length of a classic era story because most of them are 4.
Right, but
I knew it was a big ask.
I really like this episode, and when you throw it in context that they're doing an episode a week, right? Yes, right. I think if we were going to re-edit this, you could probably get it down to 6 episodes, but this was really enjoyable. This was a great story. It was a great plot, a lot of good characters, a wonderful villain, a quasi-companion, with the photographer. I just loved everything about this. So anyway, throw that in there. I love watching the Second Doctor. Every time you give us one of these Doctors, and we talked about, I think this is my favorite classic Doctor, and you say that every time we're watching.
Yep.
They say that Matt Smith based a lot of his Doctor on this Doctor. You can see that very easily. And it was such a nice surprise for me because I had not looked at the IMDb page. I had not read anything about it. I pulled up the episode through BritBox. I started playing it, and you see the two, as you said, men in black, and it's that cute reveal, and the Brigadier just, Doctor! And
what's up?
yes, it was. It is that kind of feeling like, oh, my old friend, the Doctor, and that immediate companionship and connection. I just love that every time I see, and it always saddens me that we never got to see. The Brigadier was able to do the Sarah Jane adventures, but it just makes me sad he was never in Doctor Who Prime. Tennant, Smith, someone should have experienced him, and I think that is one of the big
in the modern era
mess ups of the modern era. I think that I'm looking at all of you,
Well, it wasn't my decision. I would have had him in
I'm
there.
looking at the show. I'm looking at you, Russell T Davies. I'm looking at you, Stephen Moffat. That you should have made that happen because we needed that. I just loved it, and I'm looking forward to talking about the rest of it. But their connection is just so much fun.
Yeah, and just the chemistry between them, it really clicks, and I'm sure it's one of the reasons why they decided, well, hey, let's just, the ratings were kind of on a slide during this Patrick Troughton's final season, so they decided to kind of try to shake things up with the introduction of UNIT and making the third Doctor Earthbound. So I guess they figured, well, this is great stuff. Let's see if we can do that and see what audiences think, and especially since, by the time John Pertwee's era comes along, UNIT's been introduced. The audience is already familiar with the concept, and so it'll be something that kind of help the audience get adjusted to John Pertwee taking over, I think. So, John, how about you? What did you think of UNIT's introduction into the Doctor Who mythos?
Well, I was pretty happy that they stayed with the whole with time travel. Like we always talk about timey-wimey, and when they meet face to face after being abducted, you don't even realize that Benton is part of UNIT. He's just kidnapped him. When they introduce themselves, like they get reintroduced to each other. First off, he's a brigadier now because he's the Doctor says Colonel Lethbridge Stewart. He's like, no, brigadier. I'm moving up in the world. And Jamie's just like, we just saw them not too long ago, but in the brigadier's thought process, it had been a few years already.
Yeah, exactly.
So
he makes that comment.
Yeah,
so really nice point.
You're bringing the time travel
compared
into
to a few weeks. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's and we get introduced to a lot of characters that I kind of wish they would have carried on. Jimmy, I think would have been great going through the rest of the stories in the John Pertwee era.
Right.
Obviously, Benton's a corporal at that point in time. We still haven't met Mike Yates, but obviously that's there's other characters that are going to come and go. But yeah, I was really happy about it.
Yeah, I don't think Mike Yates turns up until Terror of the Autons, if I'm not mistaken.
I think that was his first one. Yeah.
Yeah, so that was like John Pertwee's fifth story back then. Yeah, I kind of like the idea that we're introduced to Benton in this, but like you said, he's only a corporal, and essentially he's just kind of one of the other extras for the most part.
Mm-hmm.
He's not exactly given us overly significant role, and the only time he really does anything of real note is when he's the one, excuse me, who drives Jamie, Zoe, and Isabel and drops them off so that they can go hunt Cybermen in the sewers and to get photos. And, then he gets kind of chewed out by the Brigadier. Probably like the first, one of the very first time that he gets chewed out by the Brigadier for letting them, go into the tunnels. And I just thought it was interesting that that of all the characters in this story, you would think like, well, they would have brought back Jimmy, like you said, John, but they bring back Benton, and maybe it's just maybe the actor that played Jimmy, Robert Sidaway, wasn't available.
Mm-hmm.
You wonder, right? Like it just could have been like this guy was doing something else. So
You kind of wonder the behind the scenes on this, like what was in the decision making process.
And Benton seemed to be he was kind of a badass in the earlier episodes of this story. And
yeah,
then
he was.
when you see him like later down the line when he's in the when like the Earthbound Adventures with John Pertwee's doctor, they almost kind of dumb him down a little bit.
Make him more comic relief.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, just kind of to get, like I said, to give the Brigadier somebody to yell at, I guess.
Right, yeah. And in the beginning, he's kind of like in the shadows, and you don't know who he is, and you get that Men in Black type vibe. And then later on,
that was
it's just
cool,
like,
right?
Yeah, I liked it.
Yeah, so it's like, why didn't we get to see more of Benton as kind of like almost kind of like a CIA, agent or something for UNIT? Why wasn't he doing more undercover work?
And one of the things I really liked in this episodes is you see UNIT fully funded. You see all the, the Brigadier has all these resources. He's got the two-way transmitter. He can, you need a Jeep, you need a bazooka, you need a helicopter, whatever you need, I'm your guy.
Yeah,
right? Like,
we got planes, they get the kind of, the UNIT marching theme to playing as like, oh, hey, here's the troops coming off the airport, off of the carrier, and just all the military stuff going on. So you kind of get that little military style music chiming through.
And another thing, right, is that when they toward the end, right, when they need to get with the Russians would have a missile. They would be ready to launch. You show that they are truly, United Nations, and they could reach across borders, and they were treated with respect and like, oh, this is something that needs to be done. I really liked that, seeing that. It just you sometimes get the feeling, often, especially in the modern era, UNIT's kind of in its own little world, and in this, showing it kind of it's in full bloom was nice to see for me.
Well, the other nice thing to see was the fact that they really knew what they were doing in this one too. You've got some later stories down the road where UNIT is almost like the Keystone Cops.
Yeah,
and the thing that I really liked about this is the fact that I could have put this in my trivia before from earlier, but the Ministry of Defense actually, air quotes, lent the BBC a platoon to go with them for the final battle scene, and they kind of gave them a few little hints and tips, like, okay, well, this is how this would go, and they actually learned from the real guys
to make it more credible.
Exactly,
That's good. That's good.
I'm so glad you brought that up, because I had not, I think subconsciously, I noticed that and didn't think to write it down, but you're absolutely right, because sometimes in the UNIT is a foil, right? We have to show how smart the doctor is, so therefore we're going to show how foolish UNIT is, and not all of UNIT, but just certain things, and the doctor having this disdain among the military and everything. On this one, there isn't that. They are partners. He respects them. He respects the brigadier. He respects his men and what they're doing. There is a place for them, and I think that. I'm glad you brought that up, John, because I think that's an excellent point and part of the reason why this story works so well.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, it also highlights the differences between Patrick Troughton's doctor and John Pertwee's doctor, because like you said, Jesse, in the Pertwee era, there's that friction often between the doctor and the brigadier, because he's the kind of more pacifistic scientist railing against, the military establishment. Whereas, like you said, with Troughton's doctor, the second doctor, he's more accepting. He understands that they're a tool that needs to be used in order to defeat the Cybermen, just like they were a tool, even though there wasn't UNIT, but that the military helped him deal with the Yeti threat. So it was a means to an end. And we know the Doctor is all about like turning people into soldiers and to fight his battles or her battles. And but here with UNIT, they're already soldiers. So they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. Mm-hmm. And I think Patrick Troughton's Doctor picks up on that rather quickly. And just his incarnation is a little bit more tolerant and accepting of the idea than, say, Pertwee's was. So,
plus they saved his butt a couple times in that story.
Yeah, exactly. Now, on the subject of Troughton, we could probably spend the rest of the podcast just talking about how great Patrick Troughton is. Mm-hmm. I know that, and we're obviously gonna talk about Vaughn because the Doctor and Vaughn have this very, almost like it's Bond versus like Blofeld type relationship in this, a little bit, just the good guy versus the bad guy. So that the mad, bad guy. And so it was great to see Troughton have a foil to go against, that adversary to kind of give him, just to kind of trade barbs with, to help piece the plan together, and just to kind of give him someone to rail against, an adversary. And but obviously with Troughton, you have to see these great comedic moments. I loved the scene where, just in the final episode where he's being shot at and he's just hopping around trying to avoid being shot.
The little jumps and everything.
The little jumps, yeah, mm-hmm. Exactly. Almost like these little frog jumps, whereas he's trying to keep his keister from being, fired upon. And but Troughton just delivers that with such humorous charm. And I really love that. It just showed just what a wonderful talent he was.
Did you notice in the animated episode that they animated that jump as well, at least once?
Yes, they did. I did
good.
Notice that. Yeah. They did a little nod to that, I think.
Yep.
Probably the animators couldn't resist, so they're like, "Oh yeah, here's a place we could throw that in."
They have to. Yep.
Yeah. So John, let's start with you. Do you have any favorite Patrick Troughton moments as the Doctor in this one? Before we move on,
I love the fact that when he and when Jamie is talking to Professor Watkins, and the Doctor knows that they're being watched by Vaughn on the security system, and he's trying to he's waving his hands like no, don't say that. Then he casually puts a little magnet on top of the camera. He's like, okay, now we can talk. I love that part.
That was good. That was good. Jesse, how about you? Do you have any favorite Second Doctor moments that stood out for you?
I hate to say all of them, right? But it just it is. He's just he has, right. I think you might be the first one who mentioned that a lot of people, the cosmic hobo, right?
Hobo, yeah, the cosmic hobo.
Yeah, you see that network. You see that twinkle in his eye. Always thinking ahead. I
the
like
mischievousness.
Yeah, I think it's funny that because this is like in the late 60s, the Doctor is hating computers, which just seems really weird because he's from a future society where there would be computers. Maybe he just doesn't like early computers. But yeah, I just think he's just very charming. And once again, he comes across as, quick and the fastest, one of the smartest people in the room. And when we go to our next section, when we go to the third section and talk about our villains, right? This was a worthy adversary, which helped. Yeah. Another reason why the episode is so good is it
gave them something to chew on.
Yeah, it did. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Now you mentioned twinkle in his eye, and that kind of reminded me of something else. Another of my favorite Troughton moments really quickly before we move on. I love the part where just after, like the Cybermen battle is over between the UNIT and the Cybermen, and the Doctor's kind of like sitting there in the street, and Isabel's going around taking pictures of everything going on.
Yes.
And she comes across the doctor, and in this great moment, Troughton spots her taking pictures of him. So he spruces himself up. He tidies himself up. He's like,
his hair.
Here. Yeah, he's just like, hey, how's this pose? Does this work for you? And I love that.
Well, everybody
He's
talks
kind of
about
preening for the camera.
Everyone always mentions the great speeches that we get in the modern era. There were so many great speeches that Patrick Troughton had in his stories. I look at the one from Tomb of the Cybermen when he's talking to Victoria about her family. I mean, there's just gems littered throughout his episodes.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, like I said, we could be here all day talking about Patrick Troughton. Easily. All right, so let's move on. Topic number 2, let's talk about those crazy kids, Jamie, Zoe, and Isabel, kind of get themselves in a little trouble. Now, this on top of, hey, Zoe and Isabel kind of getting themselves in trouble because Zoe, because she's awesome, sabotages, takes out the welcoming computer at International Electromagnetic by feeding it a bad equation that is insoluble, and too much to her delight as she kind of shows off a little bit for Isabel, and Jamie, of course, kind of puts his foot in it a little later with them because he's talking, the Isabel is kind of miffed off at the brigadier, calling him, like you man, and Jamie's like, well, the brigadier's right, and like you're women, you should be staying behind, and that obviously does not go over too well.
I had that.
So I want to talk. So let's get into that a little bit. So Jesse, let's start with you first, since you're ready to talk about that.
Yeah, that was one of my notes. Is that unfortunately. And you can explain this because Jamie's from the past, but this is also something to do, with when they're filming this, right? And it is a very
it is 1968.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. There is an uncomfortable sexism built into that you're going, oh, Jamie, please, please, please. I liked the kind of,
because we're kind of on the cusp of the sexual revolution.
Yes, right, on. And that this kind of that the swinging 60s and the go-go girls and and the short skirts and Isabel is just wonderful. You like, once again, another should have been maybe a companion. It would have been
almost companion.
And then I don't remember, and this is one of the downsides of us skipping around as we watch episodes.
Kirk,
is that I don't remember as much about Zoe, but she's really smart, and she shows it several times. Like, well, it's impossible, young lady, for us to send this missile and kill all these people. Oh, the mathematical calculation. So give me a pad. Oh, here, try this.
How about just give me 30 seconds? Yeah. And
it was
just
a
completely
great scene, and then
she just said, "Hold my beer."
It worked. Oh, I'm sorry.
I love Zoe. She's just so.
Yes.
She was perfect because she kind of complemented everything because Jamie was the guy from the past, Zoe, essentially the girl from the future, and traveling with the doctor, and Zoe was able to bond with the doctor because they're both super intelligent. And played off, the chemistry was just so wonderful between all three of them. It's kind of like I know a lot of people like Victoria, but I prefer Zoe personally. I just love her as second Doctor companion.
And let you jump in here in a minute, John. But I also, when Jamie and the Doctor are in the building and kind of doing the investigating, and it is almost a farce, right? Like, oh, they're watching a ray, and no, Jamie rushing. Their chemistry back and forth is amazing. Mm-hmm. They have such a good companionship, doctor relationship, and I just love watching them together.
Yeah, John, how about you? What did you make of Jamie and Zoe in this one, and also Isabel?
Well, Jamie is always hands down. He's probably one of the greatest companions we've ever had. And Zoe, I got to agree with you. I love Victoria, but Zoe was, she was one of the few companions that could actually match wits with the Doctor in terms of her intelligence. And that, just like we were talking about before, that scene
and
where
maybe
she
smarter than him.
Yeah, exactly. And she's like, okay, well, if you do this, this, and this, we can just hit all the ships at one time with one missile. And they're just looking at her like, what are you talking about? And she does it. And that was just it was perfect. And Isabel, a lot of classic series fans, they said that they would love to have seen her as a companion. Even though we never got her as a companion, we got a really, really good character with a believable backstory. And she was working her way to become a photographer. The pictures of her she had taken to earn the money to get her equipment. She knew what she was talking about.
Yeah, she modeled it first to get money, so that then she could start her photography career.
Right,
like you said.
And she when she suggests going down into the sewers and taking photographs of the Cybermen, and the brigadier's just like, well, okay, do you actually know what you're talking about? And she's telling him what kind of lenses to use, and she knows her stuff. And I love the fact that she doesn't leave notes. She writes it on a wall because you can't lose a wall.
Exactly, that was very fun.
It's just.
It really fleshed out her character.
Yeah, it's putting those little quirks to completely make her an individual, not just
make her a person.
Right, not just another just a one-off. I adored her. I thought she was great. Yeah. And a little fun fact here: somebody actually stole all those pictures that were taken of her halfway through the filming, so they had to use somebody else.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
That's funny. That's funny.
Yeah, no, I thought they were.
I don't want to think about what they did with those pictures.
Yeah, exactly.
I'll be in my bunk.
Let's not go there.
I'll be in my bunk.
Yeah, let's not go there.
I did also like the fact that we got kind of an ending, right? She got hired by a news magazine. She's going to be a photographer traveling the world. So we got kind of a period on kind of we closed the loop on her story, which was kind of nice to see too.
Yeah. And if she was just one of these just regular one-off, one-and-done characters, she'd be forgettable.
And we kind of got the vibe, at least I got the vibe, that she and Jimmy were going to hook up.
Well, I think
we're in the process of hooking up. She calls him like her dolly soldier, and it's like, don't call me your dolly soldier in front of the brigadier, okay?
Yeah.
But yeah, I kind of got the vibe that maybe that's where those two characters got left off. They're like, okay, they're kind of flirting with each other through the last half of that story. So after the Doctor, Zoe, and Jamie take off, you can kind of see those two hooking up. At least I could.
Oh, absolutely. I totally agree with that.
Even on a captain's salary.
Even on a captain's salary.
Yes.
Well, yeah. She's like, oh, so you're not rich then. And it's like, there's more to the money.
Well, and I also think.
So she's a little superficial, I think, Isabel. You got to worry about these things. I love the idea that they're off having their own adventures. That, she's getting in trouble, as a Lois Lane-ish, and he's there kind of as her soldier guy. And also sometimes she's saving him because in a lot of ways she's smarter than he is and brighter. So, yeah, I love those characters. Yeah, there you go, fanfic writers. Get to it. Write those adventures of Jimmy and Isabel.
Jimmy and Isabel, all right. Yeah.
All right. Topic number 3. Let's talk about our big bad Tobias Vaughn and Packer and the Cybermen. Poor Packer. And so we have what is essentially like Doctor Who's version of Ernst Stavro Blofeld.
Yes, absolutely.
And his hapless henchman Packer, and who apparently can't do a damn thing right, and the Cybermen who Vaughn has allied himself with with the intention of taking over the world and then kicking the Cybermen to the curb, but the Cybermen always one step ahead of him and are ready to kick him to the curb first, which does not make a very happy Vaughn, as it turns out. So, John, let's start with you. What did you make of our big bads in the story?
I love Kevin Stoney. I think he's fantastic in everything he does. He's got that sneering look with the like you said earlier with the lazy eye. But yeah, he's like
that smug expression on his face that you want to punch.
He's like one of the nicest people in real life. And even during filming, he was just like, I'm gonna have to be pretty harsh with you in this scene. So he says it's just acting, and they're just like, yeah, we know, just go ahead and play the scene. But
you're the bad guy.
And Tobias Vaughn was like our classic series version of John Lumick, basically, and he's just easily just an engineering and electronics tycoon. But he'd probably be like the worst boss to ever work for because he is just violent. He's got his own private army, which I could say most baddies do. But even when they bring Watkins in to talk to him, he smacks him. He puts him down hard, and it's just like
there was that great moment, and I'm sorry for interrupting.
Oh no,
where Travers is like, threatening Vaughn, like, hey, if I get the chance, I'm going to kill you, and Vaughn is just kind of like laughing at him, going like, oh, okay, well here, Packer, give me your gun, and then he hands it to Watkins, and says, go ahead, big man, give me your best shot, shoot me. And finally, when he pressures him, he doesn't do it at first. He's like, what, you afraid to kill me? And then he kind of bullies him into firing. And so he fires, but then there's like 4 bullets right in the chest. And, but doesn't do anything because Vaughn has apparently augmented his body.
He's been partially converted, yeah.
He's got partial conversion, by the Cybermen. So I thought it was a great moment and shows essentially
he was probably,
what kind of a sadist he is.
Yeah,
a little bit.
He was probably just like Toberman in Tomb of the Cybermen. His mind was still there, but most of his body was converted. So, but Packer, I love Packer. He's just the guy you love to hate. He tries so hard, and just the fact that he's got a gun, he makes him invincible. But when at the end when he finally gets cut down by the Cybermen, that is like one of the coolest scenes ever. And you got Vaughn's trying to get in touch with him on the 2A video, and you see the Cybermen's head just pop into view. It was kind of chilling at first.
Hi, how you doing?
Yeah. And, but that's when you start to see like the real people coming out there. He's afraid, he's scared. Of course he tries to shoot the Cybermen, which is useless. But at the very end, he gets cut down, and then when Vaughn realizes that the Cybermen they're going to betray him, it's just like it's bringing a bully down to them being bullied. He's like I want to destroy him because I hate him. It's just okay.
Yeah, like you were like allies like 5 seconds ago.
Yeah, but now I hate him, and I hate him. And I could just see him like stomping his feet. But just like I said, he's the guy that you would never want to work for. That's I've seen owners like somewhat in like that, but it's like I'll stay away from that company. But
absolutely,
or have them as president.
Yes, absolutely.
I was waiting for that.
Yes, indeed.
All right, Jesse, what did you make of Vaughn, Packer, and the Cybermen in this story?
So first off, Tobias, great first name. I'm thinking of Black Lightning.
Yeah,
right?
Tobias Whale, yeah.
Which is a villain, right?
What is it about the name Tobias? They have to be the big bad guy.
Yeah,
don't name your kids Tobias, okay? It's a very bad sign.
So
if you do.
I'm going to try to do this without destroying our listeners' ears, but Vaughn had the ability of, I'm going to raise my voice when I'm not getting my way, right? Like, even it just, it was so funny how childish he is. Like, okay, he's arguing with the cyber machine, right? And it's
the cyber planner,
like, I'm just going to raise my voice and shout you down so that I'll get my way. Who does that sound like? Okay, we'll move on.
Yeah, I know. I know. I just put that thought in everybody's head. Sorry about that. Maybe it's that debate last night.
I was going to say we're recording this after the first presidential debate, but I love that character, the arrogance of him. That, like, okay, you can build. If I shout loud enough, I'm going to have my way, and And
then he gets all mad because his big world domination plan gets screwed over by the Cybermen.
Yes.
And so he's like, well, that's it. Well, they screwed me over. I'm going to get them. I'm going to screw them over.
So I did think when this starts, right, and like, here's an egotistical human thinks he or she can manipulate the Cybermen to better them and come out on top, and I'm picturing Rocky the Squirrel. That trick never works, right? You just see, like, this is going to end poorly. Now,
keep in mind, this is only, like, the fourth time the Cybermen had appeared. Right. So a little early in their mythos.
But you still know anytime you're going to try to connect with an alien, you're going to end up getting the shaft. And yes, Packer is a little bit Otis and a little bit Miss Tessmacher, from the first Superman movie. And he is such a great
villain. Not nearly as cute as Valerie Perrine.
Not nearly as cute. But he played a great henchman, just really, about thug and being there. Yeah. I really liked it a lot. And I also love the slow-moving wall every time he's going to talk, right? And then he goes down the mall. This is, I know that...
I don't suppose you could speed things up. Yeah.
I know Mike Myers did most of his work based on Bond movies, but if there's a chance Mike Myers watched this episode, that helped fill part of those films he did, right?
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, it's just. I think it's just the time period because this was 1968. This was the year before On Her Majesty's Secret Service came out.
Okay.
So and right after Sean Connery had presumably left Bond with You Only Live Twice, only to come back after On Her Majesty's Secret Service in 1971 with Hey, Diamonds Are Forever. But so it's just that kind of time period that this is when Bond was huge in pop culture.
Absolutely.
And obviously I think Doctor Who picking up on some of that here.
Yeah, really
with this
good
particular
stuff.
bad guy. Yeah, kind of like doing Doctor Who doing its own sci-fi twist on a Bond story.
Yeah, and what else? Because you had such a strong human villain and henchman, so it made it. We're gonna beat the Cybermen. We always do beat the Cybermen, but this kind of gave it a unique twist. Gave a good storyline. I like the tension at the end. About the missiles. Is this going to work? Are we going to do this thing? I also enjoyed, though it was kind of cheesy, when Vaughn has his little machine, and every time a robot push it at him, and you're zip, and they kind of go out of control.
That was one of those. He tries to early test this. What he called a cerebration mentor device.
Oh, the Cerebratron,
yeah, and use that. So he tested on the one Cyberman, and who apparently goes completely insane because he starts feeling emotions and whatnot, and just is freaking out. So all you hear is this Cyberman screaming, going, ah! Ah! Going crazy in the tunnels, and so they just. Packer, I think, makes a comment like, well, shouldn't we do something about that Cyberman who's just kind of roaming the tunnels? And he's like, no, leave, Vaughn's just like, no, leave him. Anybody that is in the tunnels deserves to encounter that guy. So, so you got this poor, like, insane Cyberman walking around the tunnels.
What do you think of the cost saving they did by using the exact same office in both London and in the factory?
Yes, yeah, and you notice they explained it. They did.
Yes,
at least they addressed it, because Vaughn makes this comment. Yeah, you're right. And he goes, well, I prefer to have everything exactly the same because, that's how I do my business. Uniformity. That's the key.
And that actually makes sense, right? Like, it is a good, it helped, instead of just a hand wave to explain how they save costs, it actually helps build the character. So I thought that was a really nice little, that was well done. They kind of hit two birds with one stone.
And it's amazing how the sun actually comes in through the windows the exact same way in both locations.
That's great.
Yeah. Anyway, I love Vaughn. I thought he was a great villain. He just loved to tune to the scenery. And he is, he's the typical, like world, dominating bad guy that gets kind of just turns into a big petulant child that doesn't get his way.
Absolutely.
Because when the Cybermen, in there, and he had to know this was coming, because if you think about the plan that the Cybermen had here, that they were going to use this hypnotic signal sent through the devices that International Electromatics made to kind of incapacitate everybody, to kind of, make it, more easier for them to take over. So, the Cybermen were just, like right there and ready to take over themselves. So, but Vaughn, for whatever reason, thought, well, hey, they're my allies. They're going to let me do what I want, right? And even though they're kind of telling him all the way, the Cybermen weren't really hiding that they were going to betray him with this.
Not at all.
Yeah, they're just like, no, we're not really going to go along with your plan. We're going to do what we want. We're going to do it on our schedule. And just Vaughn didn't want to listen to that.
Not very smart. No. Or he thinks he's smarter than everyone else.
And again, that's, like you said, Jesse, that's his arrogance coming right through.
That's a really cool invasion idea, though. I mean, just
it is.
With the signal through every single device that has their equipment in it. That was really cool.
And it'd be kind of like, today, if you're going to retell this story in today's setting, be like, oh, we're going to send that signal through everybody's cell phones.
Cell phones, yeah.
Yeah. And, essentially take out humanity so that we could just walk right in and take over.
I think that part of the story was from Kit Pedler, because Derek Sherwood was the writer, but it was based off an idea. Yeah.
Yeah. It was a story idea by, like you said, Kit Pedler, one of the co-creators with Jerry Davis of the Cybermen. But, yep, you're absolutely right. All right. Anything else about the story that we missed or overlooked? All right.
No, I think it was just like I said, it was long, but it really was a good story. And this was, I could see.
For 8 episodes, it goes pretty well.
Yeah. I think you're absolutely right, Charles. That's right.
It could have felt like more of a slog, but doesn't, because there's a lot going on in these.
Yeah.
And they kind of broke it up, like, hey, in the middle of the story, let's just have this big helicopter rescue and, get some action going to keep everybody's interest.
I think you're right, and also the characters were really well developed. The supporting character, we've already talked about how much we loved Isabel. We've got Packer and Vaughn, and so it's good seeing the Brigadier. We've got all this. We didn't even talk about the Brigadier's boss that's being mind controlled. You mentioned that a little bit, but that was a good moment, and that added a nice little wrinkle.
The Brigadier
to the
was
story.
just like, the Brigadier was like getting rebuffed by the Major General, and he's
Rutledge,
like, Rutledge, and he's like, well, fine, I'll just take it to the United Nations, and then we'll just go around you.
Who originally he was supposed to commit suicide in this story too.
Oh, was he?
Yeah, but they ran out of time for filming.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, that probably avoided a lot of controversy then.
Probably, yeah.
Yeah. Knowing classic Doctor Who as I do,
Yes.
but at least I don't know if this was before Mary Whithouse or around that time, but yeah. All right. I know that she was in around the Tom Baker's era. All right. Favorite quotes. Jesse, got some favorite quotes?
So I did not write many, but I did write one just because I think it's hilarious that the Doctor, a Time Lord, brightens up at the mention of tea. And like, oh, thank you. And a patty cake biscuit? Like, what?
Yes.
Why, as a Time Lord, and it's just so very British.
Don't knock tea. Okay?
I'm not knocking tea.
As I'm holding up my tea bottle.
Yes,
No.
indeed. Yes. Go ahead, John.
Gentlemen prefer tea.
There you go. A couple of them from.
By the way, I'm drinking iced tea as well.
You
There
are
you go.
okay.
Yes, there you go.
I got my water, so I'm okay here. So.
That's all right. That's in tea, so that counts.
Right after one of the first run-ins with UNIT and the Cybermen, they're all walking along and they see a bunch of them a bunch of dead ones on the ground. The Brigadier looks at the pile. He says, "That was just a dozen of them. I'd hate to beat 100." And then he says, "Forward." So he's stating the obvious, but then he's just going right back to work. I crack up every time I hear that.
Just like you just love the delivery of that.
Yeah. Just like he's like, okay, well, let's just state the obvious. Yeah, I'd hate to meet 100 of these guys. Okay, back to work. Let's go.
All right. Do you have any more?
Let's see. When he's talking to Jimmy on the after they rescue them from the stormtroopers who completely miss everybody and the helicopter when they're getting away from the factory.
Well, they are stormtroopers after all. We
Yeah.
know how stormtroopers can't hit anything. If you're a Star Wars fan,
Yeah, exactly.
more of Star Wars ripping off Doctor Who. Just saying.
Right. Well, the Briggs says no casualties, and he says no, none, sir. Fortunately, Vaughn's jackboots couldn't shoot a flying elephant.
That's great.
And I was watching it when I was doing the rewatch. I've seen this story so many times before, but I was rewatching it a couple days ago, and during that whole battle, nothing is getting hit. You're not even hearing any ricochets or anything. There's just shooting left and right and thing other stuff. These guys are just they're stormtroopers. And then for him to say that line afterwards, I was cracking up.
There was no good reason why someone that was whatever character was on that rope ladder should not have been shot, because that helicopter wasn't going anywhere because they had to bring everybody up. So all they had to do was just shoot straight.
Yeah.
And unless there was a lot of wind because of the helicopter, but still, I mean, that was pretty bad shooting. I agree. So I got a couple here. I got a few. We already talked about the, you can't lose a wall, so I won't use that one. But you can't lose a wall, can you? Yeah. But I liked Isabel and Zoe, where Isabel says to Zoe, "You're still worried about your two friends, aren't you?" And Zoe's like, "Yes, a bit." Isabel replies, "They can't have gotten themselves into any sort of trouble, can they?" And Zoe goes, "Oh, you wouldn't say that if you knew them. If there's trouble to be found, the Doctor and Jamie can't miss it."
Mm-hmm.
Good point.
I'm going to cross that off of mine here.
Yeah, that was a good one. And let's see, the Doctor telling the Brigadier, "But what's so odd about people going into the building?" And the Brigadier says, "Oh, there's nothing about them going in. The trouble is some of them haven't come out."
Mm-hmm.
So I thought that was a good line. And lastly, I'm going to do exchange between various characters. The Brigadier says, this is after the missile explosion, that Zoe helps calculate. And Brigadier says, exactly as you predicted, a chain reaction of explosions. And this guy named Branwell says, "It's fantastic. How did you do it?" And Zoe replies to him, "Well, it's all quite logical, really. Hardly any calculation needed at all, except for simple stuff like speed, angle of descent, and relative positions of the spaceships." And this guy named Peter says, Can't we keep her on, sir? She's much prettier than a computer.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Nicely done.
And she's wearing the glittery catsuit at the same time.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, her famous Zoe's famous glittery catsuit, which gets covered mostly because she's got that feather boa and the coat or whatever through most of it. And then she kind of ditches it last couple episodes. Like, okay, it's action time, so break out the catsuit. And notice nobody at UNIT had one thing to say about that catsuit. K9. Hey, K9. Chiming in. All right. All right. So, what's everybody's ratings? John, let's start with you. What's your rating, sir?
I'm going with 9 flipped manhole covers out of 10.
Nice. You really like this one.
I do. The only the 8 episodes is a little long to watch it in one go. I think that's the only thing. But something happens in every single story episode, so it's like it's a really hard 9 for me. But
yeah. All right, Jesse, how about you?
So I gave it 8 out of 10. I liked it not quite as much as John, but a solid episode. And I'm giving it 8 out of 10 transistor radios.
Oh, very nice. Very nice. I'm going to make the average on this one because splitting the difference between you two, I give it 8.5 out of 10 feather boas.
Ooh.
I almost picked feather boas as my thought. Yeah, very nice.
But this is a solid. It is a bit long, and I think I agree with Jesse. I think it probably could have been cut down to 6 rather well, and have been a really tight story at 6.
Yeah.
Terrence Dix was quoted as saying the same thing. He said it could have easily been 6 episodes.
And I don't.
But
think
for 8, I think it does well.
Yeah, I do too. And I don't think we mentioned, right, but this was the first episode where he was story editor, wasn't he? I think I read that somewhere. Because they were talking about this was the string of his long time.
Sure.
Okay, I thought I read that in IMDb.
Off the top of my head.
Okay.
I won't say that you're wrong. I'm just saying I can't remember. I don't remember.
Yeah.
All right. So anybody wants to back Jesse up on that one, feel free.
Absolutely.
Okay, so reverse the polarity.
So which modern UNIT episode are you going to pick? I had trouble trying to guess.
What is your guess? What do you think?
I want to pick the one where we see the Brigadier's daughter for the first time, and I don't remember the name of it. That's the one I would have picked.
All right, and John, any guesses?
Well, I'm going more for the for the bad guy type vibe on here. I'm going to guess Age of Steel.
See, that's a very good guess. I was tempted to do that one, but instead I've decided to go with Dark Water / Death in Heaven. Episodes 11 and 12 from Series 8 in 2014, written, of course, by Stephen Moffat. And this one, the reason I chose this was primarily because in 2014 London, we start off with Danny Pink getting killed by a car, and, he ends up dying, and so the doctor decides to take Clara to look for Danny in the afterlife. And that leads them to this place called the 3W Institute. And there they get greeted by Missy, who claims to be a welcome android. But hey, it turns out she's created this, like a little slice of the Matrix to create this device called the Nether Sphere, which traps the souls of the dead. And they're going to get downloaded into upgraded Cyberman form. So it's a Cyberman episode. And then when later the doctor races out of the 3W Institute, finds that it's inside St. Paul's Cathedral in London.
Ah, there you go.
So obviously the big St. Paul's connection with the invasion. And at the very end of the story, Clara wants to kill Missy, blaming her for Danny's death. But the doctor stops her and prevents her from, exacting her revenge. And actually, Brigadier Lethbridge Stewart, brought back as a Cyberman, is the person who vaporizes Missy. Or does he? ... Question mark. So you have the Brigadier also in this story as well, sort of.
Well choice. Good choice, Charles.
So that's my recommendation. Hope everybody enjoys that. Like I said, it's mostly for the St. Paul's Cathedral because I just love that. And I actually shared a picture with Jesse and John before we got started of a picture that I took in 2017 of that same shot where the Cybermen in the invasion, they're walking down the steps and St. Paul's is in the background.
Probably one of the most iconic shots of the show. Yeah,
Exactly. And it's interesting to see how that location, that exact spot, has changed over the decades.
Oh yeah.
Because now the steps, looks like the steps have been upgraded. Like there's some buildings on the side that have been changed, and there's like a tree now. And notably, they even since Dark Water, Death in Heaven, when they recreated that shot, they added, it looks like in 2017 between 2014 and 2017, it looks like they added a wheelchair accessible to go up the steps. So that's a little different. And I'll be kind of curious to see which of the Cybermen would actually go down the wheelchair accessible ramp next time they decide to march across that area.
Very nice.
Legs weren't upgraded yet.
So listener feedback. We got some feedback, of course, from Holly Mack and Dave Proctor.
So we'll switch it up. You can read Holly, and I'll read David.
Okay. So Holly writes in about the invasion, and she goes, "Hey, Charles and Jesse. I have to say I really enjoy the animation of the missing episodes. Jury is still out if the Doctor can speak cow." He speaks baby. Yeah. I'm sure he speaks cow. Zoe should trust her instincts about being split up from the Doctor and Jamie. Things never turned out as planned. Yay, I forgot the Brigadier was in this story. Vaughn almost bears a similar resemblance to John Lumick. Maybe I should have took, John's advice and chose, Rise of the Cybermen, Age of Steel, I guess.
No, you were fine.
I chuckled when the Brig asked the Doctor if he was in trouble when he asked if UNIT had a helicopter nearby. Brig, you should know the answer to that question by now. If the Doctor asks for something, either he or his companions are in trouble. Isabel, you don't really have a choice in the matter of getting out of the building on the ladder. Either go or stay behind and face the bad guys. Talk about a scene out of a James Bond movie with them trying to escape. Jamie, I do have to agree sometimes the Doctor's definition doesn't fit the normal human definition of simple. Isabel, no, the Cybermen are not little green men. They're silver and deadly. The Brig knows that something is up with the way that Rutledge is acting. The pods that the Cybermen come out of are rather interesting, a lot different from the upgrade chambers they are in New Who. A Yeti Cybermen showdown would have been something to see. Maybe someday we'll get the Yeti back. That's the first thing that popped in my mind when they had the maps of the underground tunnel sewer systems. I sense a new job in Isabel's future as a UNIT surveillance leader with all her knowledge of photography and film technology. All in all, a great story. I'll wrap it up here. Holly from Wisconsin. Thank you, Holly.
Thank you, Holly. That was great. I appreciate it.
Always great.
Absolutely.
Holly making her own contribution to that Jimmy and Isabel fanfic.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Yes. All right. So our friend David K. Proctor, or Dave, as we now know. Yes.
We get to call him Dave.
Exactly. Hi, everyone. I hope everybody is well. You may feel free to edit this down if it's too long. I enjoyed the animation in the story. I thought it was very good. I couldn't help but notice that the animator left out the oddly droopy eye of Tobias Vaughn. I wouldn't normally focus on such an unfortunate feature of a person, but the difference made me notice it more when the actual actor was on the screen. It is well known that the exterior image of the TARDIS as a police box is an illusion. Apparently, damage to the visual stabilizer causes the TARDIS to be rendered invisible. I believe the Doctor takes advantage of this in other stories, but I think it could be a powerful tactic that could be used more. However, he misplaces the TARDIS often enough that perhaps it isn't as awesome as it first seems. The cyberplanner seemed awful fragile. Perhaps a bucket of water or rock thrown at it could render it useless. Well said, David.
But even if it was destroyed, they would still, the Cybermen are up in space, so it doesn't really get to stop them.
I find it interesting that the Doctor recognized Tobias Vaughn as not human based on his blink pattern. Data from Star Trek once did this. It just goes to show that the Doctor is observant on a whole other level. Zoe was exceptional when she took over for the computers and calculated the missile shots. I think the 1968 military X would probably have had a different reaction to a 19-year-old woman with a pencil and a clipboard telling him how to stop an alien invasion. Big maths indeed. Could Adria have done as well?
Adric,
yeah.
Yeah.
That's right. Vaughn reminded me of the Master in the end when he realized he was betrayed and he helped the Doctor. Good point. I find it very optimistic that the writers thought the Russians would have jumped in and donated a missile set to be a manned orbital rocket with no argument. The blind man bluff game at the end must have looked ridiculous to the observers. Thank you, Dave Proctor. So thank you, Dave. I appreciate that. Good insight as always.
Yeah, if there's a intelligence battle between Adric and Zoe, my money's on Zoe personally.
Oh yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
And Adric has this tendency to kind of die in exploding spaceships as they crash into the Earth. Just saying.
I could just see him saying, "It's not fair."
It's
Yeah,
not
exactly.
fair. Yes.
Yeah. Poor Adric. He gets such grief. But I still think Zoe would win. All right. Thank you, Holly. Thank you, Dave. If you want to be like Holly and Dave, please write to us at nextstopeverywheresmg@gmail.com. That's nextstopeverywheresmg for Southgate Media Group @gmail.com. Or you reach us on Twitter at nextstopsmg on Twitter, Facebook, Next Stop Everywhere, the Doctor Who Podcast, and Instagram at Next Stop Everywhere Podcast. Please check us out there. Follow us, like us, all that jazz. And John, where can he reach you on the interwebs?
Through Facebook, 2 groups I have there. That's the Ohio Type 40. We talk about that every time I'm on here. One of the 4 Doctor Who groups in the state of Ohio. Also Type 2 Doctor Who, support group for Type 2 diabetics who are also Doctor Who fans like myself. I would stress and ask that everyone this year, if you're participating in trick-or-treating and passing out treats, consider putting a blue pumpkin with some non-candy treats there for kids with food allergies and diabetes.
Oh, nice.
or diabetes.
That's great advice, John.
Yeah.
That is good advice.
It's going to be a little weird this year, obviously, because of the coronavirus, too.
Yeah,
so
a lot of people are saying, in my neighborhood, we're still going to do it because we figure everyone's wearing masks anyway, so we're still going to have some fun.
But make sure everybody, put hand sanitizer over those candy wrappers.
There you go.
Absolutely, yes.
Don't
Absolutely.
want to spread that around.
Yeah.
All right. But yeah, everybody, please check out John on Ohio Type 40 and also Type 2 Doctor Who. They're great. And, we obviously here at Next Stop Everywhere, we definitely support them and John's endeavors. So please follow in there.
And if you
and follow the groups.
You enjoy sci-fi and fantasy models and miniatures, you can check out my YouTube channel, Out of This World Models and Minis, where this week I have actually started work on and recording on a certain robot dog.
Oh,
K9, yes.
Yep, the old Sevens model of K9. So
Excellent.
that's going to be a fun build.
You're going to have to send us some pics of that.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, and now, John, you got your camera killed, so I can't see if you had any models or anything for this particular story that we're talking about.
I had the.
I thought you mentioned you were going to bring in some Cybermen figures or something.
Oh, let's see. I've got him. Where'd he go?
Yay,
nice.
there he is.
Yeah,
Nice.
I know you open yours.
Yep, because toys are meant to be played with.
I know.
So yeah, we both were showing off our Invasion era Cybermen figures. So
Very nice.
Oh, before I sign off, when I was listening to your last episode, which I thought was awesome because I love the Space Museum.
well, thank you.
You guys were talking about the Beatles appearing on Doctor Who.
Yep.
If you want to check out that scene, you either have to have a VHS copy or a Region 2 copy because it was omitted from the Region 1 copies due to licensing rights.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
But,
very interesting.
I thought should be able to see it on YouTube.
Actually, what I did, I had the episode taped off TV
Mm-hmm.
on VHS, and what I did, I personally, I burned it onto a DVD from VHS.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I've got it from my own personal collection.
There you go.
Nice.
So it still exists. So if anybody needs it, yeah, I've got it. So it's out there. All right. Let's see. Jesse, how about you? Where can they reach you?
So you can find me on Twitter at Jesse Jackson DFW. You may find me talking a little more politics this time on Twitter, so I apologize in advance. Charles luckily always backs me up. Almost always, Charles is like loving it, retweeting my thoughts.
There's a lot at stake right now. So,
there is, absolutely.
Very important. Like democracy, that's at stake right now, yes.
And then coming up on Set Listing Bruce, the Bruce Springsteen podcast that just hit 5 years. Next week, a special crossover episode. Dave Proctor is my guest on Set Listing Bruce. So, and that was a wonderful interview. We get in a lot of his work as a law officer, and we talk a little bit about music and some of Springsteen's songs that have dealt with people that have with the police and interaction. I was really proud of the interview, and I'm looking forward to David joining us again. Dave's a great guy. But yeah, Set Listing Bruce, the Bruce Springsteen podcast. Please check that out, where I talk to people from around the world about their musical passions. And I am a small little guest star in the wonderful Charles and Zan's Ghostwood podcast. I'm going to let him talk about that right now.
All right. Well, thank you, Jesse. We always appreciate you writing into Ghostwood. So as for me, of course, at Charles Skaggs on the Twitter machine, at Charles Skaggs on Instagram, Facebook, Charles Skaggs in Hilliard, Ohio, and my blog, Geeky Things.
Damn good coffee. And hot.
Damn good coffee and hot. We're talking about all the stuff we talk about here on Next Stop Everywhere. Your Doctor Who, your Torchwood, Sarah Jane Adventures, all kinds of comic book sci-fi news of my other podcasts they do for Southgate Media Group, including, the aforementioned Ghostwood, the Twin Peaks podcast that I do with Zan Sprouse, whom you've heard here on Next Stop Everywhere. And people like, DJ Nick and Holly and Jesse writing in, because right now, Zan and I just recently recorded our fourth in our 6-part series of Twin Peaks actors who have guest appeared on episodes of The X-Files, in addition, of course, to David Duchovny. And, we just talked the episode Humbug, which is an X-Files classic. And coming up for our next one, we're going to be talking the actor Kenneth Welsh, who played Wyndham Earl on Twin Peaks, and is going to be in the episode Revelations from X-Files 3rd season, which is a big religious story. So it's going to be a really interesting discussion, I think, as we go through that. So I hope everybody checks that out. Also, the Phantom Zone podcast that I do with Jesse, where right now we're on hiatus, but there's a lot of great comic book TV out there. And, we just recently did a Umbrella Academy Season 1 discussion. Hopefully we'll do Season 2 somewhere down the line and other things. So keep your fingers crossed that we get to do more of that. And also Titan Talk, the Titans podcast they do with DJ Nick and Jesse. Right now, both Titans and Doom Patrol are on hiatus as well, but we know that we're going to be getting Season 3 of both shows, so hopefully it won't be too long before we bring that back as well, and hope everybody checks that out. Now, before we sign off, and I did want to give a quick shout-out to special guest companion Lee Leonard, who recently had some rather involved surgery, spinal surgery. I don't want to get into details. Yeah, spinal fusion.
Sounds like a new band name.
Yeah, so it sounds like he got through it.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully he's on the mend. So, Lee, if you're listening, please know that all our thoughts are with you. Hope you get well soon, and hope to get you back on the podcast, my friend, because you're awesome, and we always appreciate you here. So,
well said.
Get everybody, send him all your positive vibes, all your timey-wimey vibes, and wish him a speedy recovery. All right. Next time on Next Stop Everywhere, episode 203. Now, we were originally going to be talking Carnival of Monsters with Dave Proctor, but sadly, Dave is having a work schedule conflict. And so we tried to figure out an alternative day and time, but that didn't work out. So, Dave, we're going to have to wait until Dave comes back later to talk the Doctor's Daughter, back when we get around to discussing David Tennant in our Doctor run. So I thought we could do a different John Pertwee story. And since, October's coming up, I thought we could do a nice creepy story. So how about we do, instead of Carnival Monsters, how about we do the Daemons from the John Pertwee era, as John, I think, approves.
Oh,
Yeah,
I love it.
So, yeah.
It's a great, great story. If you've ever seen The Wicker Man, it has a very heavy Wicker Man vibe.
Yes, it does.
And lots of, essentially, this is probably as close as Doctor Who gets to really exploring the supernatural as well. So, and of course, hey, you get the return of Roger Delgado as the Master.
So mote it be.
So, exactly. So mote it be. So, Jesse obviously hasn't seen this one, but as John and I can verify, this is a good one to talk about.
I've been to that village, too.
And it's only 5 episodes compared to 8 episodes, so
yeah.
Hopefully Jesse will get through this one okay.
Absolutely, yes.
All right. So that's what we're going to do as we kind of get into Halloween season. I thought that was a great one to start off with as a backup. Now, I am reserving Carnival Monsters for Dave when he's available, and I think we'll be doing that sometime around the new year. So we won't entirely skip it. We're just going to kind of push it off a little bit on the schedule. Okay. So apologies to Dave, but I think we got a good one to talk about in its place. So, John.
Yes, you do.
So, John, any final thoughts before we sign off?
I don't think so.
All right.
This is such a fun story that I'm so glad we got a chance to talk about it.
Yep, and you'll be back with us in a couple weeks, hopefully, to talk State of Decay.
Yeah, some vampires.
Yeah, vampires. So that can also
nice.
So we're going to be continuing this little Halloween fest of Doctor Who a little bit. Jesse, any final thoughts from you?
No, just this was a fun one. I really enjoyed it. I'm looking forward to our Halloween episode next week to kind of see some creepiness, so this will be good.
Yep. So everybody come on back, episode 203. I don't think I have to sell it anymore. The Daemons with John Pertwee, Joe Grant, and it's going to be a lot of fun. The Master's back. And
Unit,
and a serious, like I said, Wicker Man vibe. Trust me on this.
Yes.
So everybody check that out. Come on back next week. It's going to be a lot of fun. We'll see you next time right here, Next Stop Everywhere, the Doctor Who podcast. Goodbye, everybody.
Goodbye.